Coincidences happen. Most are fleeting, easily dismissed. But what about those that strike with a chilling precision, a resonant meaning so profound it feels impossible to be mere chance? If these uncanny moments have made you question the fabric of reality, you are not alone. These are synchronicities, powerful, meaningful coincidences rippling through lives everywhere, hinting our world is stranger, more intimately connected than we believe. They're not random quirks of fate. They're profound shared experiences suggesting hidden patterns and tantalizing reasons. Our quest is to explore what lies behind these potent moments. We'll plunge into Carl Jung's psychic theories, John Keel's chilling chronicles of cosmic trickery and UFOs, the insights of ancient wisdom, and the mind-bending frontiers of quantum physics. Are these moments divine breadcrumbs, intricate illusions, or direct whispers from the conscious heart of the universe itself? Prepare for startling stories and compelling explanations of the meaningful coincidences shaping our lives. You might just find the answers you've been looking for. The modern mind, so often shackled to the predictable rhythm of cause and then effect, tends to dismiss them, these startling confluences, as mere statistical hiccups, the inevitable output of a universe teeming with random events. Yet, the sheer breathtaking improbability, the felt significance of certain encounters, demands more than a cursory nod. It demands a pause, a deeper breath, an inquiry into the silent organizing principles that might lie dreaming beneath the surface of the everyday. It was the Swiss psychiatrist Carl Gustav Jung, a man who dared to navigate the uncharted oceans of the human psyche, who truly brought synchronicity into the lexicon of the Western world. He wrestled it from the twilit realms of the occult and superstition, not to dissect it with cold rationality, but to hold its shimmering, multifaceted nature up to the flickering light of psychological inquiry. He defined it with careful precision, not as simple coincidence, however improbable, but as a causal connecting principle. Events, he proposed, could be linked not by a discernible chain of cause and effect, but by shared meaning, by a resonance that struck a chord deep within the observer. His most famous illustration of this remains a cornerstone, the story of the golden scarab. Jung was treating a young woman, highly intelligent, impeccably rational, but locked in a kind of intellectual fortress that rendered her resistant to the therapeutic process. She was, as Jung described, psychologically stuck. One day she recounted a powerful dream from the previous night. In the dream, she had been given a golden scarab, an ancient Egyptian symbol of rebirth and transformation. As she was narrating this, her voice calm and measured, Jung heard a gentle, insistent tapping sound behind him, at the closed window of his consulting room. He turned, opened the window, and into the room flew a living insect. He caught it in mid-air. It was a Cetonia aurata, a rose chafer beetle, the closest European equivalent to the Egyptian scarab, its wing casings shimmering with a distinctly golden-green hue. Jung turned back to his patient, his hand outstretched, presenting the beetle. "Here," he said, his voice lightly carrying the weight of the moment, "is your scarab." The effect, Jung reported, was instantaneous and profound. The woman's rigid rationalism shattered. The sheer impossibility of the event, its perfect, dream-echoing arrival, broke through her defenses in a way that months of reasoned discussion had failed to do. It was a catalyst, an irrational intrusion of the symbolic into the material that unlocked her capacity for inner movement and healing. For Jung, this was no mere party trick of fate. It was evidence of a profound mystery, a window into the interconnectedness of psyche and physis, mind and matter. But Jung's intellectual quest was not a solitary one. He found himself in deep conversation with the brilliant physicist Wolfgang Pauli, a Nobel laureate whose own life was marked by periods of intense personal turmoil and a keen interest in the symbolic language of dreams and archetypes. Pauli, grappling with the bizarre, acausal behaviors of particles in the quantum realm, found a resonant echo in Jung's explorations of the psyche. Together, they speculated on the existence of a unus mundus, a one-world, an underlying unified reality from which both the psychic and the material realms emerge, like two distinct facets of a single uncut gem. In this vision, synchronicities are not just random. They are eruptions, momentary transparencies where this unified field, this implicate order, shows its hand. They are expressions of an underlying meaningful pattern, a kind of cosmic choreography where our innermost states can find a startling, sometimes unsettling echo in the world around us. This idea that the universe might possess a poetic, rhyming quality is not new. Consider the strange, recurring culinary tale of the French writer Émile Deschamps. As a boy, around 1805, he was introduced to a rather delightful plum pudding by a certain émigré, a Monsieur de Fontgibou. The taste, the occasion, clearly made an impression. 10 years later, Deschamps, now a young man, found himself in a Paris restaurant. He saw plum pudding on the menu and eagerly ordered it. The waiter returned, apologetic, informing him that the last portion had just been served to another customer. Deschamps glanced over, and there, savoring the final bites, was none other than Monsieur de Fontgibou himself. A remarkable coincidence, certainly, but the story doesn't end there. Many years passed. In 1832, Deschamps was at a dinner party with friends. Plum pudding was again on the menu. As it was being served, Deschamps recounted his two previous encounters with the dessert and Monsieur de Fontgibou, remarking with a laugh that all that was needed to complete the bizarre trilogy was for Fontgibou himself to appear. He barely finished the sentence when the door to the dining room opened. An elderly, somewhat disoriented man entered. It was, almost unbelievably, Monsieur de Fontgibou. He had, it turned out, mistaken the address for another gathering and stumbled into theirs. 3 extraordinary appearances of a specific man and a specific dessert, spanning nearly 3 decades, each more improbable than the last. What are we to make of such a narrative? Is it merely an amusing anecdote, magnified by the telling? Or does it hint, as Jung might suggest, at an acausal, meaningful pattern playing itself out, a thread of connection woven by unseen hands? The French astronomer and writer Camille Flammarion, who documented this and other similar cases in his book L'inconnu et les problèmes psychiques, The Unknown and Psychic Problems, was fascinated by such coincidences of death or psychic coincidences, believing they pointed towards forces and connections beyond our normal understanding. He recounted the story of a Baron von Stockhausen, who, about to leave for a journey, repeatedly dreamed of a specific dilapidated house in the country. In the dream, an old woman lay dying, and a man in a workman's blouse tended to her. The dream was so vivid and recurring that, upon reaching the area, he inquired about such a house. He was led to it and found the scene exactly as in his dream. The dying woman, the man in the blouse. The woman, upon seeing him, cried out, "Thank God you have come at last. I can die in peace." She had, it turned out, been praying for a priest and mistook the Baron for one. He stayed, offering what comfort he could until she passed. These are not always comforting tales. They are often unsettling, carrying a numinous charge, that sense of encountering something wholly other, something sacred, or profoundly mysterious. Jung recognized this numinosity as a hallmark of true synchronicity. It's the shiver, the awe, the feeling that one has brushed against a deeper layer of reality. It's the universe leaning in to whisper a secret that once heard can change the listener forever. As Carl Jung meticulously charted the inner landscapes where synchronicity bloomed, a different breed of investigator was emerging, one who would find these meaningful coincidences not in the quiet of the consulting room, but in the chaotic, high-strangeness theater of the unexplained. The mid-20th century saw an explosion of anomalous phenomena, unidentified flying objects streaking across skies, cryptic messages received, bizarre entities encountered on desolate roads. And into this maelstrom stepped John Keel, a journalist and author whose initial skepticism would curdle into a unique and disturbing worldview. Keel wasn't your typical armchair theorist. He was a field investigator, drawn to places where reality itself seemed to be unraveling. He plunged headfirst into the bizarre wave of sightings and events that plagued Point Pleasant, West Virginia from 1966 to 1967, the infamous Mothman incidents. What he found there, and in countless other investigations across the country, was not simply isolated reports of flying saucers or strange creatures. Instead, he uncovered a bewildering, interconnected tapestry of weirdness, where synchronicity was the unnerving, shimmering thread that tied it all together. He began to suspect that the entities behind these phenomena were not necessarily extraterrestrial, not visitors from distant star systems in nuts and bolts spacecraft. He proposed something far stranger, far more unsettling, that we were dealing with ultra-terrestrials, beings coexisting with us, perhaps interdimensionally, able to manipulate our perception of reality, our very environment. For Keel, synchronicities were often not the gentle, guiding whispers Jung described. More frequently, they were integral components of a larger, often disorienting and even sinister pattern. He saw them as tools employed by these ultra-terrestrials, part of a conditioning process, a way to ensnare witnesses, to manage their beliefs, to lead them down bewildering rabbit holes of fear, obsession, and paranoia. The Mothman saga is a chilling case in point. It began with sightings of a large winged humanoid with glowing red eyes, but soon escalated into a cascade of paranormal events. Witnesses reported terrifying poltergeist activity in their homes, prophetic dreams that hinted at disaster, eerie, metallic-sounding phone calls with distorted voices speaking in riddles, and encounters with men in black, unsettling, often pale-faced individuals who seemed to know far too much, issuing veiled threats or nonsensical warnings. According to Keel's meticulous documentation in the Mothman prophecies, these events were interwoven with an almost unbearable density of synchronicities. Names, numbers, places, and times would repeat in bizarre and meaningful ways, creating a sense of inescapable orchestration. Witnesses found themselves caught in webs of coincidence so thick they felt they were losing their minds. Keel himself was not immune. He received anonymous phone calls predicting future events, some of which came true with horrifying accuracy. The entire period was supercharged with an atmosphere of dread, culminating in the tragic collapse of the Silver Bridge on December 15, 1967, which claimed 46 lives, an event some had foreseen in fragmented, nightmarish visions. Were these ultra-terrestrials attempting to warn humanity? Or were they, as Keel grew to suspect, engaged in a far more complex and manipulative game, perhaps even subtly instigating or simply observing the unfolding chaos, using synchronicity as a lever to amplify belief, fear, and disorientation? Keel's work paints a picture of a cosmic trickster, an intelligence that is not necessarily evil in a human sense, but perhaps amoral, capricious, and deeply alien to our understanding of motive. Consider this narrative, echoing the kinds of stories Keel often encountered. In a small, isolated town, A series of strange lights are seen in the sky. Shortly after, a local farmer, let's call him Jed, claims an encounter with a tall, shimmering figure in his fields. The next day, Jed receives a phone call. The voice on the other end is metallic, speaking in short, cryptic phrases, mentioning Jed's deceased brother by name, a name only his closest family knew. Then, the synchronicities begin. The number 117 appears everywhere, on license plates that cut him off, as the time he wakes from unsettling dreams, as the sum of change he receives at the local store. He starts seeing the same black car, seemingly driverless, parked down his road. His tools go missing and reappear in odd places. He feels constantly watched. He becomes obsessed, his life consumed by trying to decipher the message. Friends and family grow concerned. The phenomena are leading him not to enlightenment, but to isolation and mental anguish. The pattern, if there is one, feels less like guidance and more like a cruel, calculated unraveling. This trickster element, the idea that synchronicities can be misleading or part of a larger deception, stands in stark contrast to more benign interpretations. Keel documented cases where individuals, following what they believed to be significant synchronicities, were led into bizarre, sometimes dangerous situations, or became entangled in elaborate hoaxes that seemed orchestrated by an unseen intelligence. It forces us to ask a deeply uncomfortable question. If we are indeed receiving messages through these meaningful coincidences, who is the sender, and what is their true agenda? Are we merely pawns in a game whose rules we cannot comprehend, played by entities whose motives are forever beyond our grasp? The fear here is not just of the unknown, but of being actively manipulated, of reality itself being a stage for cosmic theater, and our lives are the scripts. This perspective, born from the unsettling shadows of ufology and Fortean phenomena, adds a necessary layer of caution, a twinge of cosmic horror, to our exploration of synchronicity's strange allure. It suggests that sometimes the patterns we perceive might be traps, beautifully laid, by intelligences that do not necessarily have our best interests at heart. Or perhaps they operate on a logic so alien that our concepts of benevolent or malevolent simply do not apply. But what if the architects of coincidence are not external entities at all? Neither benevolent guides nor cosmic tricksters, but are instead reflections of something far more fundamental, something woven into the very warp and woof of the cosmos itself, and intimately connected to our own consciousness. What if the universe, in its deepest nature, possesses a kind of mind, an inherent awareness, and synchronicity is its subtle, often poetic native language? This path of inquiry, surprisingly, leads us not to ancient grimoires or seance rooms, but to the shimmering, paradoxical, and utterly strange landscapes of quantum physics. At its subatomic heart, reality behaves less like the predictable clockwork machine envisioned by classical physics, and more like a vast, interconnected thought, a flowing river of potentiality. Consider the famous observer effect. The very act of measuring a quantum system inevitably changes it. Particles, it seems, exist in a superposition of multiple states simultaneously, a blur of possibilities, until a conscious observer makes a measurement. At that moment, the wave function collapses, and a single, definite reality crystallizes from the probabilistic haze. Could it be that our focused attention, the emotional charge and intent we bring to certain thoughts, hopes and fears, somehow observes or coaxes the corresponding pattern into manifesting in our external world? Is the act of recognizing a synchronicity itself a form of this participatory observation, solidifying meaning from the flux? Then there is the phenomenon of quantum entanglement, famously dubbed spooky action at a distance by a skeptical Albert Einstein. When two particles become entangled, they remain mysteriously connected, sharing the same fate, regardless of the intervening distance. If you measure a property of one particle, you instantaneously know the corresponding property of its partner, even if that partner is light years away. This instantaneous correlation, faster than the speed of light could carry a signal, hints at a profound underlying wholeness to the universe, a level of reality where separation is an illusion and everything is interconnected in a way that defies our everyday intuition. Perhaps our own consciousnesses are entangled in this vast sub-quantum web, our mind's nodes in a cosmic network. Synchronicities, then, might be the momentary visible ripples on the surface, revealing these hidden informational tethers, these unseen lines of communication. The visionary physicist David Bohm explored this concept through his idea of an implicate order, a deeper enfolded level of reality from which our everyday explicate world of separate objects and events unfolds. In this model, everything is fundamentally interconnected within this implicate order. Synchronicities could be moments where the veil thins, where the enfolded connections of the implicate order become momentarily visible in the explicate world, revealing the meaningful patterns that underpin existence. This is not to say quantum physics proves synchronicity, but its strange principles offer a conceptual language, a set of metaphors that resonate deeply with the experience of meaningful coincidence, suggesting a universe far more mysterious and interconnected than Newtonian mechanics ever allowed. This notion of a conscious, interconnected universe is not a recent invention of quantum theorists. It echoes through the corridors of ancient wisdom and mystical traditions across the globe. The Hindu Vedas and Upanishads speak of Brahman, the ultimate, indivisible reality, the conscious ground of all being, from which the diverse universe arises and into which it returns. The individual self, Atman, is ultimately identical with Brahman. Synchronicities from this perspective could be seen as moments when the illusion of separation momentarily dissolves and the underlying unity of Atman and Brahman flashes forth. Similarly, Buddhist philosophy, particularly in Mahayana traditions, explores concepts like Indra's net, a vast, cosmic net adorned with infinite jewels, each jewel reflecting all the other jewels, symbolizing the interconnectedness and interpenetration of all phenomena. A synchronicity, then, is like noticing a specific reflection that illuminates the entire interconnected web. Ancient Celtic spirituality spoke of thin places, locations where the veil between worlds is permeable, where the mundane and the magical intermingle. Aboriginal Australian cultures, with their concept of the dreamtime, perceive a timeless, all-encompassing spiritual reality that underlies and infuses the physical world, where past, present, and future are interconnected, and where mythic events constantly shape current reality. Synchronicities could be moments where one touches this dreamtime. Hermetic philosophy, with its famous axiom, as above, so below, as within, so without, posits a correspondence between the microcosm, the individual, and the macrocosm, the universe. Meaningful coincidences perfectly embody this principle, where an inner psychic state finds its precise echo in an outer worldly event. Consider the story, often recounted in creative circles, of an inventor struggling for years with a complex mechanical problem. Exhausted and on the verge of giving up, he takes a walk in a park. He idly watches children playing with a peculiar discarded toy, its simple mechanism interlocking in an unusual way. Suddenly, in a flash of insight, the toy's movement provides the exact conceptual key he needed to solve his intractable problem. Later, he discovers the toy was a one-of-a-kind prototype, accidentally left behind by another inventor hours earlier. The sheer improbability, the perfect timing, the precise relevance of the found object. It feels less like random chance and more like the universe itself conspired to deliver the solution. Was his intense, focused desire, his mind wrestling with the problem, somehow tuning in to a resonant frequency in the informational field around him? Or is consciousness itself a fundamental property of the cosmos, subtly guiding and arranging events in ways that foster insight and connection? The lines blur between mind and matter, observer and observed, and we are left to wonder if we are isolated sparks of awareness in a dead universe or integral parts of a vast, living, conscious cosmos that occasionally whispers its secrets through the language of meaningful coincidence. Beyond the grand philosophical frameworks and the unsettling shadows of cosmic trickery, synchronicity appears to dance with a particularly vibrant energy in the realms of human creation and discovery. Call it the muse, the intuitive leap, the serendipitous accident. But countless artists, scientists, inventors, and innovators throughout history have described moments where their breakthroughs arrived not solely through diligent effort, but via a startling, perfectly timed confluence of inner thought and outer event. It is as if the prepared mind, wrestling with a problem or yearning for an expression, suddenly finds the universe itself offering a crucial, unexpected key. Consider the realm of science. The story of Friedrich August Kekule, who struggled to understand the structure of the benzene molecule, is a classic. According to his own account given in 1890, after years of fruitless labor, the solution came to him in a reverie or dream. He saw atoms gambling before his eyes, forming long chains, twisting and twining in a snake-like motion. Suddenly, one of the snakes seized its own tail, forming a ring, and whirled mockingly before him. Kekule awoke with a start. Benzene was a ring structure. This dream image, a perfect symbolic answer arriving at a moment of mental impasse, revolutionized organic chemistry. Was it mere subconscious processing? Or did this profound image, this synchronistic vision of the Ouroboros, an ancient symbol of cyclicality and wholeness, well up from a deeper archetypal level of reality, connecting his focused quest with a universal pattern? Similar tales echo through the corridors of invention. Stories abound of inventors on the verge of abandoning a project, only to encounter a seemingly random object, a snippet of conversation, or a natural phenomenon that, in a flash, provides the missing piece of their puzzle. It's the discarded toy, whose peculiar mechanism unlocks a new engineering principle. The way light refracts through a dewdrop, sparking an idea for an optical device. The rhythm of a train journey suddenly aligning disparate thoughts into a coherent theory. These are not passive recipients of luck. These are minds primed by intense work. And it is this very intensity that perhaps makes them more receptive to the subtle, meaningful alignments that synchronicity can offer. The resonant echo seems to find fertile ground in the passionately engaged intellect. In the arts, the presence of synchronicity is perhaps even more openly embraced. Poets speak of finding the perfect elusive word by chance on a discarded newspaper page. Novelists describe characters seemingly taking on lives of their own, their paths unexpectedly intersecting with real-world events that mirror or inform the fiction in uncanny ways. Musicians have recounted melodies arriving whole in dreams, or a chance encounter with an unfamiliar sound sparking an entire composition. Paul McCartney famously described the melody for Yesterday coming to him in a dream. He was initially so convinced he must have subconsciously plagiarized it that he spent weeks playing it for people, asking if they'd heard it before. The melody, so perfectly formed, felt less like an act of composition and more like an act of reception, a gift from the ether. Could it be that in moments of intense creative focus or deep meditative inquiry, the boundaries of the individual psyche become more permeable? Perhaps we tap into what Jung termed the collective unconscious, a vast reservoir of shared human experience and archetypal imagery. Or, as some theories of a conscious universe suggest, we might be aligning with a broader informational field, a cosmic intelligence that subtly responds to our focused intent, offering clues and connections through the language of meaningful coincidence. These eureka echoes are not merely about getting lucky. They are about a profound dialogue between the inner world of human aspiration and the outer world of unfolding reality, a dance of discovery where meaning and matter momentarily entwine to spark something entirely new. How deeply are our creative impulses and our moments of genius truly our own? And how much are we conduits for a larger, unseen intelligence-seeking expression through us? The spark of creation, it seems, often arrives on the startling wings of synchronicity. So we stand at a conceptual crossroads, the signposts shimmering with the strange light of improbable chances, each pointing towards a different understanding of these meaningful coincidences. On one well-trodden path, psychology and probability theory offer explanations that ground synchronicity firmly in the known workings of the human mind and the statistical nature of reality. Confirmation bias, they suggest, plays a significant role. We are pattern-seeking creatures, wired to find meaning. And once an idea or a number or a symbol becomes salient to us, we begin to notice it everywhere, conveniently forgetting the countless instances where it doesn't appear. It's like buying a red car. Suddenly you see red cars everywhere. They were always there, but now your attention is primed. Then there's apophenia, the tendency to perceive meaningful connections between unrelated things. Our brains are so adept at pattern recognition that they can sometimes find patterns even in random noise. And of course, there is the simple law of large numbers, powerfully articulated by statisticians like Percy Diaconis and Frederick Mosteller. In a world of nearly 8 billion people, living complex lives filled with myriad daily events, even staggeringly unlikely coincidences must occur with predictable frequency. Someone, somewhere, is bound to win the lottery twice or meet their long-lost twin by chance in a foreign land. From this perspective, the truly astonishing thing would be if such extraordinary coincidences never happened. Imagine a skeptic, let's call him Arthur, who hears about a friend's remarkable synchronicity involving a series of encounters with the number 47. Arthur, a mathematician, decides to track his own number encounters for a week, deliberately looking for patterns. Unsurprisingly, he finds numerous instances of various numbers appearing in seemingly significant contexts, but no single number dominates in a way that feels statistically inexplicable beyond heightened attention. He might conclude that his friend's experience was simply a case of focused attention on the number 47, creating an illusion of profound meaning. These rational explanations are crucial. They provide a necessary counterbalance to unbridled speculation, reminding us to seek mundane answers before leaping to mystical ones. And yet, for those who have experienced a truly profound, life-altering synchronicity, these explanations, while intellectually sound, often feel incomplete. They address the coincidence part, but not the meaningful part, not that deep, visceral thump in the soul that declares, this matters. It's the uncanny timing, the precise personal relevance, the emotional weight and numinous charge that cry out for something more. The story of Austrian neurologist and psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor, provides a powerful example. According to his accounts, shortly after being liberated from a concentration camp, Frankl was in Vienna, desperately searching for any news of his wife Tilly, from whom he had been separated. He found a small piece of marble in the rubble of a synagogue, a fragment of a tablet that once listed the 10 Commandments. The piece he picked up contained only one Hebrew letter, the initial of the commandment, "Honor thy father and thy mother." Later that day, he was given his wife's belongings. Among them was her membership card from the Theresienstadt camp. Her mother's maiden name was Ehrenkranz, meaning wreath of honor. The link, via the concept of honor, was overwhelmingly potent for Frankl, confirming for him a sense of meaning even in the face of unimaginable suffering. Probability alone feels insufficient to capture the power of such an experience. This is where other theories emerge, suggesting that synchronicities might be orchestrated not by external intelligences or cosmic laws, but by aspects of our own deeper consciousness. The concept of a higher self, a transpersonal center of wisdom within us, or the ancient Greek idea of the daimon, or Roman genius, a personal guiding spirit, suggests that these meaningful coincidences could be messages from this inner sage, nudging us towards growth, healing, or our true path. Consider the story of David, a quiet accountant who felt a growing, inexplicable dread one Tuesday morning as he prepared for his commute. His route was always the same, a busy highway he'd driven for 15 years. But that day, a sudden, almost violent impulse made him turn left onto a scenic, winding country road, a route he never took. It would make him late. It was illogical, yet the compulsion was overwhelming. He couldn't shake the image of a heron he'd seen standing sentinel in a field by that road years before. Later that morning, he heard on the radio that a catastrophic multi-car pileup had occurred on his usual stretch of highway at the precise time he would have been there. Several people were critically injured. His seemingly irrational detour, prompted by a strange unease and a forgotten image, had saved him from almost certain involvement. Was it his subconscious picking up subtle, unacknowledged cues of danger? Or was it a whisper from a deeper, protective part of his own being, an inner daemon steering him clear? Then there are synchronicities that arrive not as warnings, but as profound affirmations or catalysts for change, like the artist we mentioned earlier, struggling with a debilitating creative block. Imagine her, let's call her Clara, in her dusty studio, surrounded by half-finished canvases, the silence heavy with her despair. She idly pulls an old, forgotten art monograph from a high shelf. Tucked within its pages, a faded, brittle envelope. Inside, a letter, handwritten in the familiar script of her beloved mentor who had passed away 5 years prior. The letter, it turned out, had been written to her shortly before his death, but was never mailed. In it, he spoke with uncanny prescience about the very doubts and fears that now plagued her, sharing his own past struggles with creative desolation and offering specific, heartfelt encouragement. The timing was so precise, the message so perfectly tailored to her current crisis, that it felt like a direct communication from beyond the veil. This experience didn't just break her creative block, it reoriented her entire relationship with her art, imbuing it with a renewed sense of purpose and connection. The fear here is not of external manipulation, but of the awesome responsibility and power that might reside within our own psyche, capable of orchestrating reality in ways that deliver precisely what we need, even if the method is startlingly unconventional. We find ourselves then not at a final destination with a neatly packaged answer, but standing within a labyrinth of mirrors, each reflecting a different facet of this shimmering, elusive phenomenon called synchronicity. The path has wound through the sober, well-lit chambers of science and psychology, through the shadowed, unpredictable alleys of Forteana and ufology, into the luminous, resonant halls of spiritual insight, and along the mind-bending, paradoxical corridors of quantum speculation. Each perspective offers a valuable lens, a unique angle of approach. Yet no single lens, no matter how sharp or wide, seems capable of capturing the entirety of the experience in all its perplexing, multifaceted glory. Perhaps this inherent elusiveness is part of their very nature, even their purpose, to resist easy categorization, to defy simplistic explanations, to crack open the shell of the mundane, and remind us that reality's skin is far thinner, more permeable, and wondrously stranger than our everyday assumptions allow. They are the cosmic koans, the riddles whispered by existence itself. Are they, as many spiritual traditions and personal testimonies suggest, messages from benevolent guides, angelic interventions, or affirmations from the universe that we are indeed on the right path, that our prayers are heard? Stories abound of individuals at a crisis point, receiving an uncanny sign, a perfectly timed piece of information, or an unexpected helper appearing as if from nowhere, steering them towards safety, healing, or profound new understanding. One such account tells of a woman lost hiking in a vast wilderness as night fell and temperatures plummeted. Despairing, she prayed. Minutes later, an owl, a creature rarely seen so close, landed on a branch just ahead, then flew a short distance, landed again, and looked back, repeating this until it had led her to a barely visible trail, which she followed to safety. A mere animal behaving oddly, or something more? Or must we heed the cautionary tales, the chilling whispers from researchers like John Keel, suggesting that some synchronicities might be lures from cosmic tricksters, complex manipulations by ultra-terrestrial intelligences, leading us into bewildering games for their own inscrutable amusement, or as part of some grand, dispassionate experiment. Consider the unsettling case of an individual who, after a UFO sighting, begins experiencing a cascade of synchronicities that initially feel enlightening, pointing towards arcane knowledge. But as they delve deeper, the synchronicities become more bizarre, more demanding, leading them to isolate themselves, to adopt increasingly paranoid beliefs, their life unraveling under the weight of perceived messages that ultimately offer no solace, no real wisdom, only more confusion. The fear here is palpable, that we are not masters of our destiny, but perhaps puppets in a play orchestrated by unseen and not necessarily benign stagehands. Could synchronicities be the universe's way of winking at itself, a playful self-awareness bubbling up from the quantum depths, where consciousness and information are perhaps the primal, undifferentiated sea? The physicist John Wheeler, with his concept of a participatory universe, suggested that the cosmos might, in some sense, come into being through the observations of conscious beings. Are synchronicities moments where this co-creative dance between consciousness and cosmos becomes particularly visible, highlighting our role as participants in the ongoing genesis of reality? Or are they, at their core, simply the mind's relentless, often beautiful, attempt to find pattern and meaning in the inherent chaos and randomness of existence? A sophisticated form of apophenia, a psychological projection onto an indifferent cosmos, as necessary for our sanity as storytelling itself. This view doesn't strip them of their power, but locates that power firmly within the human psyche, in our innate drive to weave coherence from the threads of experience. The fear they can invoke is multifaceted, fear of the unknown certainly, but also fear of the implications. If reality can indeed bend and shimmer in such personally meaningful ways, what else is possible? What unseen influences subtly shape our choices, our perceptions, our destinies? What hidden orders lie beneath the surface of the apparent? Yet within that fear, or perhaps intertwined with it, lies a profound and irresistible invitation, an invitation to pay attention, to listen more closely to the subtle whispers that thread through the cacophony of daily life, to look for the hidden poetry in the often mundane prose of our existence. Ultimately, whether synchronicity is primarily a product of our own deep psyche, an objective feature of the physical universe, a spiritual signpost, a trickster's game, or some intricate combination of all these and more, its most undeniable power lies in its capacity to awaken us, to jolt us from our habitual modes of thought and perception, to make us question, to wonder, and perhaps most importantly, to realize that we are participants in a far grander, more mysterious and more interconnected conversation than we ever dared to imagine. The patterns are there, like watermarks on the page of reality, humming just beneath the surface of the ordinary, waiting for a receptive mind, a willing heart, an attentive spirit to notice their subtle, insistent, and sometimes profoundly challenging song. In the quiet aftermath of these reflections, the true nature of synchronicity remains an elusive quarry, a shimmering, multifaceted jewel that, when grasped, seems to change its colors, its facets, its very substance. We have journeyed from the quiet dignity of Jung's consulting room to the strange, electrified landscapes of Keel's ultra-terrestrials, from the mind-bending elegance of quantum interconnectedness to the ancient, intuitive wisdom of a conscious cosmos. We have acknowledged the sober voice of skepticism and the intricate dance of probability. Yet the raw experience itself, that sudden, startling, often numinous resonance between our inner world and the tapestry of outer events, endures as a deeply personal, sometimes unsettling, and often profoundly transformative enigma. Perhaps the ultimate meaning of these acausal, meaningful connections is not to be found in any single definitive theory, but in the persistent way they shatter our complacency, forcing us to look up from the well-worn map of our daily lives and acknowledge the vast, uncharted territories of mystery that surround us and lie within us. They are invitations to a cosmic dance, whose intricate steps we often learn only as we move, guided by a subtle music that seems to emanate from the very heart of reality itself. What these resonant moments truly are may remain forever debated, forever a captivating whisper in the pervasive static of the unexplained. But their persistent call to wonder, to explore the luminous edges of knowing, and to embrace the profound mystery of our existence, is surely a gift in itself. Listen closely. The universe, in its infinite strangeness and beauty, is always speaking.